Oh, the 4-1 seeds, no surprise here. You've got Gonzaga, you've got Baylor, you've got Illinois, you've got Michigan here. And let's start with Gonzaga. Their region sets up incredibly well. That's the first thought that I have, because Oklahoma, who was red hot for a period of time, wins over Kansas, wins over Texas, a win over Alabama in that Big 12 SEC challenge. But by the same token, Coach, there's no question that they've got to try to find what they had, because they have not been the same team in recent weeks. And Missouri is in that 9 slot. So for the Zags, I just like the way that this sets up for them, because I've had mixed thoughts on Virginia, and they're on the 4 line. They've had an up and down year, and do not sleep on Coach Bowles' Ohio Bobcats there as a 13th seed for sure. So I the first reaction I had when I saw Gonzaga's region was, yep, the committee gave them the respect they deserve.
Well, and I look at their 2 seed, which is Iowa down there, in the big bracket in the second weekend. And, they already beat them by 11 in a game that wasn't, back and forth, pull away at the end. It was 11 for a long time. Gonzaga looks like one of those teams, Zags fans, that can go a long, long way. And I guess, John, the question is, can they be our first undefeated champion in the NCAA history since 1976? Because really, it looks like their path to the Final Four would be this is not the path of least. These are great teams. Everybody's a champion. But if you just, look at, this is not Kansas of the old Kansas days, right? This is not Tony Bennett's best Virginia team. And you've already beaten Iowa, who's awesome. But it really looks favorable for Gonzaga.
Yeah, to your point on Kansas, I think that's the one team that intrigues me, just because we know that Bill Self can put something together, and between David McCormick and his role and the fact that they've been battle-tested, Garrett and Wilson, like they do have Agbaji, they do have some pieces here. It's just a matter of, can it all come together at the perfect time of year? But when I think about Iowa and Gonzaga, to your point, I know that meeting came a long time ago, but we saw just how well the Zags matched up with Iowa in the opening minutes of that game, and Iowa just could never catch up from that. And that's why I think about this draw, and I think Virginia, a team that has kind of been mixed, again, offensively, has had troubles sustaining that, like we've seen in the past when they have had flaws. And even Creighton is the 5 seed in that mini pot on the top. And the Blue Jays last night, they lost by 25 to Georgetown, and it's clear that Creighton's definitely in a bit of an off-kilter area here heading into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you look at the late season controversy caused by their coach, and that has an emotional effect on the team. There's no doubt about it. And Creighton needs to rebound from that, get their mojo back. When we talk about Iowa Gonzaga matchup, the problem for Iowa is not exclusive to Iowa. It's what Gonzaga does to everybody in the country. And the one interesting thing I like, that again, we talk about Oklahoma's got strong perimeter defense. Kansas got strong perimeter defense. I'm curious about Kansas and McCormick coming off COVID, their pause, and whether that contact tracing. I believe it was just close contact. I don't believe there was a positive test.
Right.
And so that's great for the young guys. But when you look at this, Missouri is a physically tough team. So Oklahoma, that is going to be a fist fight. And Gonzaga going through that. And I guess, I feel like Norfolk State and Appalachian State, maybe we're just completely dismissing. I just don't see that 16-1 matchup being a problem game for them. And so I'm looking forward to that second round game, just as you are, and then getting into that Sweet 16 Elite 8 look too, as we go further down the line. And it really should be good basketball. And that side of the bracket's going to have some interesting games. Santa Barbara's no joke now. They've only lost 2 or 3 games all year.
Yeah.
And they're going to be very good. And we just saw Ohio seizing that momentum and through a conference tournament championship run, and maybe they can put that to work against Virginia like San Francisco did earlier this year.
How about Taj Edey and USC as a 6 seed here in this region? And they're going to meet the winner between Wichita State, who just barely made it. They had to do some sweating. and Drake. And I know you know a thing or two about what Drake has done this year, Coach. I am really intrigued and love this stage for Drake because they've gotten some attention, but the first four, all eyes are on you. What a chance for them to showcase themselves. And it's got a Missouri Valley vintage feel with Wichita State and Drake meeting again.
Yeah, how about that? A little throwback. One of the difficulties for Drake has been, their leading scorer, I believe it's Hemphill, got hurt, but they've still played very good basketball without him, which I think their only quad one games were in league, which probably explains why they're in the first four. Wichita went on pause a couple times and missed some high level games, especially I know versus SMU would have been in one of those high level games that they would have got a chance to play. And so I think that'll be a phenomenal matchup. When you look at all of those games on Thursday, and you've got Michigan State, UCLA, which I know we'll get to later, and we've got Drake, Wichita, it's going to be really, really good basketball from the get-go.
If you have a question, let us know. I'm with you, though. I got to tell you, when this first came down, I thought to myself, man, UC Santa Barbara's only lost a few times this year. The Gauchos are an interesting team, and they've got some length as well that can create some matchup problems. But for Ohio really did seize that moment. And we've seen the Mid-American pull off some shockers. How about 2012 when Ohio, they took down Georgetown to start an NCAA tournament run? And I like the makeup of this team because the Mid-American was a solid league this year. Toledo was playing at a high level. Buffalo was in the final. Bobcats are playing perfect basketball at the right time of year.
They certainly are, and Jeff Bowles has done a tremendous job with them, and he's got a difference maker in his point guard Preston. The problem is if you've got one of those mid-major guys that's great in the lane, now you go against potentially outside of Cade Cunningham, the second best freshman in the country, with Mobley in there making all for USC, one of the best rim protectors out there. Really interesting. Southern Cal, I expected a little more out of them moving into the Pac-12 tournament. I was disappointed they didn't, end up in the championship game. But sometimes a late loss in the year like that can really spark some momentum and spark some, a little more tenacity out of a team, so to speak. And I think that could be actually one of those things in their favor going into a matchup like this, not to overlook a MAC team.
I will say this. Oklahoma, Missouri, going back to the 8-9 game. Really interesting game. It gives me Big 12 vibes, plenty of them. By the way, if you guys have a question or a comment, feel free to fire away. For me, Oklahoma, with Davion Harmon, if he plays to the elite level, and if Brady Manick can be physical, Manick has had an up and down year. He dealt with COVID. He's dealt with being a little banged up. Oklahoma has struggled in the recent weeks. I don't see them beating Gonzaga. I actually like Oklahoma over Missouri. I do. We'll see. Pinson and Missouri could just as easily win that game. But I will say this, Coach. Oklahoma was playing at like a 5 or 6 seed level for a little bit. They fall in the 8 line, and justifiably so. They have not been good in recent weeks. But just an interesting 8 team because we've seen them hit a good level. They were in the top 15 in the country.
Yeah, whenever you see those teams that are, you see playing, you kind of set an expectation. And it was well after Christmas. This wasn't, earlier or anything like that. This is well after Christmas. You kind of say, like, that team's going to get, a 3 seed, or that team could be a 4. And then they drop to the level that Oklahoma did. Sometimes your schedule breaks that way. But, boy, I think Lon Kruger went on the road 3 straight games and beat 2 top 10 teams and 3 top 25 teams. So it wasn't like who they were playing was a joke or, somebody, a lower tier league team. In the Big 12, there's only 9 opponents. And so when you look at this, I think that is a little bit of an underseed, but I don't know if Oklahoma's got enough in the tank to go get a team like Gonzaga.
I don't think anybody does. I will proclaim Gonzaga the winner of this region right now. I saw it from first glance. There's no one in this region that I think really presents that bad of a matchup issue for them. I think for the Zags, they're going to march on to the Final Four. Anything less would be an absolute shock to me. because they just have such a well-rounded completeness to them. There's really no sense of a hole.
No doubt, no doubt. Hey, Charlie Curtin's got a question on the
Go ahead,
Virginia Ohio matchup, and when you look at Tony Bennett, I think one thing they do sensationally well, right, is they guard the ball and their post defense, the way they double the post. They've also got with Jay Huff some rim protection. So, how big and Ohio's going to go as their point guard Preston goes. And I've always said a point guard is only as good as he is in the lane. Like, he's got to be able to function in the lane well. And that's what worries me a little bit about Preston is he's not the strongest kid. He's a lanky young man, very good athlete, but he's not a rocket. He's not one of those guys that's stuck together. And a Tony Bennett team is going to beat you up by moving their feet and putting their chest on you, which worries me for Ohio and Jason Preston.
Yes.
They could just beat you up. And there's not a lot you can do about it because they know what they're doing. They walk into you, they stay on you, and they're physically so strong. That's a little bit of a concern for an upset for me, so to speak, but I still love the matchup.
Yeah, and the other thing is Jay Huff and his ability to really control the paint. He's someone who has been that guy that Virginia can count on to get it done in the paint. By the way, if you have a question for us and you're watching, just like Charlie, we hope you've helped. I think that Virginia will probably be favored by, I would guess, like 7 in a game like that. I don't think it'll be like an 11 or 12-point deal because Virginia doesn't necessarily play a style that lends itself to a blowout. But I look at Huff coach, and then I think the whole key to this puzzle for Virginia is Sam Hauser's ability to knock down perimeter shots.
He's outside shots.
He's got to make outside shots. When those are going down for Virginia, that's where we see them as a team that can compete with the heavyweights.
Yep. No, you hit the nail on the head right there. And you never know. Somebody can light it up. Somebody can make something happen. But if you look at their season, I think you've nailed that on the head. The other game that can Bryce Drew engineer the big upset that he was a part of as a player, when he hit the big shot against, I think it was Ole Miss. Can he do that with Grand Canyon as the head coach of his third down? Bryce Drew's taken Valpo. He's taken Vanderbilt, and now Grand Canyon, all the NCAA tournament. That's pretty good stuff. That's one you don't want to let get away from you if you're Iowa. You don't want to have to tangle with those guys any longer because you've got VCU, who's a dangerous team, and Oregon. And Oregon's a little bit of an unknown for me because Oregon is one of those teams that just has been interrupted so much with COVID. It's hard to get, I think, a good gauge on what their ceiling looks like.